You are fewer than usual today. Fewer and fewer. Можно, наверное, начинать. So, hello again. We are starting our lecture. Today is lecture 6. And we are going back from syntactical stylistic devices, which we discussed last time, to lexical stylistic devices, or rather, not to stylistic devices, but to expressive means of language. And today we're going to look at the systems of lexical units which function as stylistic systems, right? Well, you are familiar with this topic from your lexicology courses. You remember 2 chapters of Olga Vasilievna's wonderful book were devoted to the stylistic layers of the English vocabulary. Today we're going to look at them again and refresh them in our memory, but more from the point of view of stylistics. And we'll see which words are associated with which functions and situations. Well, as a starter, I wanted to show you this entry from Multitrend Dictionary to show you the abundance of different meanings. And you see that the meanings are distributed across various spheres of usage of language. And this is precisely what we deal with in stylistics. So apart from lexical units, we deal, or from stylistic devices, we also deal with expressive means of the language. And part of the expressive means of the language are the stylistic connotations of words, their stylistic coloring, as we discussed in our first lecture. I'm sure I'm giving you time, especially to study the different meanings of this word, and you see that there are really, really unexpected usages and meanings of the word cabbage, depending on who used them, when they use it, and in what manner they use it. For example, military jargon, medical, humorous, right? So it's also sort of professionalism. Then rough and coarse usage, colloquial slang, jargon of sewers, school slang, right? And it is interesting to study the system of all these things that we come across in dictionaries, but also in our real life. So what is behind these usages? And in order to do that, we look at the term style and genre or register. Well, you remember in our first lecture, we discussed the meanings of the word style. So now we're not going back to that. But I wanted to introduce 2 more terms. One of them is register, which is still widely used, especially in English-speaking literature, in the English literature, scholarly papers, which refers roughly to what we call style. But not always, and there is a lot of criticism behind this term. And roughly, it is the same. It is the functional and situational variety of the language that arise from variation in. And of course, if you look into specialist literature, you will see that there are different definitions to style. Some people argue it is not register. Some people argue that register is better than style. We're not going to go deep into that. What is enough for us is to know that there are such terms as style, register, and genre. Well, genre, of course, is narrower than style, right? But nevertheless, all of these are functional and situational varieties of the language that arise from variation in several factors. Genre is more related to text rather than to the variety of language. But of course, in non-rigid word use, you can come across this term as well. So variation in what is important for style and register? Variation in mode or medium. This is the words that you use. Do you remember in our first lecture, there was a slide with a drop of paint added to pure water, right? And we said that a word which is colored stylistically is like a drop of paint added to pure water and coloring the whole of it. So depending on what words you use, you sound differently, whether you use sublime words or low words, vulgarisms, archaisms, or slang. The second point is tenor or tenor, which refers to the status, like permanent status of people, like an old man, right? Or not permanent, but for example, uh, the son of some gentleman, right? The son or the father or the role of people. For example, you can be a student, a teacher, a daughter, an employee, a passerby, a pedestrian, a client, a shopper, a customer at a shop, in different situations. But it will be the same you. You will play different social roles. So depending on where you are, with whom you are, what your relationships with these people are, you sound differently. You will speak differently to your 3-year-old daughter, and you will speak differently to a boss. And finally, the field or domain. And this is the subject matter of what you are speaking about, what you are communicating about. So if you are, now we are in linguistics, but then you can go out and then you go to the shop and you find yourself talking about food, about shopping, about clothes. Then you go to you go to the theater and you talk with your friends about theater, about the roles, about the performance. Then you go to church and you, I don't know, read, say prayers, and then you sound differently. So, or for example, if you're talking to a friend, you can talk about, I don't know, carrots and recipe of a soup, or you can speak about philosophy and Kant and I don't know, Hegel and Leo Tolstoy and other things, right? So, and then your vocabulary is determined, or the way of your expression depends on the subject matter. So, mode, tenor, and field. And these define the functional and situational varieties of the language, which we broadly call styles or registers. And here I wanted to give an example of violations. Why is it so important for us, not only as teachers of English, but also as speakers of English, as practical bilinguals, to know specifically what we're talking about, when we're talking, with who we're talking about, which words we're using. Look at this fragment from the film Educating Rita. Have you seen it? No? Well, the context is like this. Дмитрий, можно готовить, выводить на слайд. The context is like this. A working class lady decides to pursue higher education. So she goes in for evening courses to a university to study literary criticism. And one day her tutor invites her over to his place to visit him because he thinks she would benefit from that. And here we can clearly see, well, this class distinction in a way. Not class, but he's upper middle class, she is lower class, right? Working class. And she's trying on different clothes, preparing to go to visit him. And she's always unhappy about what she puts on. It doesn't match the image of the situation she's going to find herself in. And secondly, he says certain things. Listen very carefully to what she is saying, and then tell me, why is she always unhappy about what she's practicing as small talk? She's trying to practice small talk. Tell me, what is wrong with what she says? Можно включать.
Will you come?
If you want.
No. What do you want?
Yeah, all right, I'll come.
Will you bring Denny?
Well, I don't know if he'll come.
Well, ask him.
All right. Rise me custom. She's still under the dryer. She only wanted a demi-wave. She'll come out looking like a friggin' muppet. I was at a house once where they served chocolate mints with their coffee. My husband. Oh, he's an electrician, you know. The marvelous Chinese takeaway just at the end of our street, you know. You seen Macbeth by William Shakespeare?
Здесь оканчиваю. Спасибо. Right. So what is wrong? Why is she always unhappy with what she's saying as practicing as small talk? That's a very subtle thing. Well, I'll repeat what she says. I went to a house once where they served chocolate mints for their coffee. What is wrong with saying this in the company of her tutor and educated people like, well, teachers? Chocolate mints clashes with what? It's not chocolate mints themselves. It's actually the triviality of what she's saying. This is about subject matter and domain. She's speaking about things that those people would probably not be speaking about so excitedly with such surprise. They went to a house once where they served chocolate mints to their coffee, right? She sounds like a child who's speaking about some treatment, like grown-ups know about this. My husband, oh, he's an electrician, you know. What's wrong? The mode is right. The words are correct. The subject matter is bad because in the company of those teachers, oh, my husband is an electrician, you know, sort of makes people look at you like, well, he's an electrician. He's not a professor, right? Sort of this sort of class thing, right? Probably we're used to this equality, you know, when people respect people no matter what their occupation is. And moreover, working specialties are even more respected nowadays than some others. But here it is felt. Or for example, have you seen Macbeth by William Shakespeare? She doesn't need to clarify, of course, everybody knows. So that's the problem. It's not only how you say it, it's also what you say, in what situation you say it, and who you say it to, right? So these distinctions are really, really very subtle. And now we go on and we'll look at the medium, the stylistic layers of vocabulary. So in a way, we're going over what you already know, but from a slightly different angle and maybe with new examples. And just to remind you this theory that there are broadly three main spheres of vocabulary, depending on their stylistic coloring. And this is the formal or literary layer, which correlates with the formal situations where you find yourself not much at ease. So whenever you are in public with other people who are not very familiar to you. And moreover, the formal layer vocabulary is more associated with the printed page. It's mostly, first and foremost, used in writing of various sorts. Fiction, journalism, newspapers, official documents, things like that. Neutral, that's what everybody can use in any situation. Not, no matter what class you belong to, what situation you're in, it's fine to use it anytime. It's like pure water. It will never do you bad, right? It will only do you good in any situation. And finally, informal or the colloquial layer broadly. The informal layer is associated with informal situations. It could be, most of all, it is oral communication. It can also be, and very often it is used in informal writing on the internet nowadays, or informal letters. And secondly, well, yeah, it is associated with informal situations where you know people, or where you are not afraid of offending people, or when you intend to offend other people, right? No matter how bad it might be. So formal, neutral, and informal, or literary and colloquial. And this is a good chart based on Ilya Galperin's subdivision of styles. In the middle, you have the whole scheme. On the left and on the right, I've enlarged the upper bubble on the left and the lower bubble on the right, right? So neutral words, standard English vocabulary is in the middle. And it overlaps with special literary vocabulary, and overlaps with colloquial vocabulary. So the zones, which are called common literary vocabulary, are used by educated people and some not very uneducated people in oral communication as well, right? And common colloquial vocabulary is used also by most people and even by the educated people as well. When they talk to each other, they're very much likely to use common colloquial vocabulary too. On the left, you see the special literary vocabulary, and you have terms. Terms are on the borderline between special vocabulary and common vocabulary, because lots of terms, as you remember from lexicology, migrate from specialist sphere to everyday use. Then we have foreignisms and barbarisms. These are foreign words which are adopted into speech, and they're almost out of the vocabulary, but you will see how they're used. Archaic and poetical words are on the way out from the vocabulary, but they're still retained in some spheres of communication. And finally, nonce words. Nonce words, the words which are coined for the nonce. In Russian, they're translated as occasionalisms, or occasionalisms, words which were created for some particular situation, and they may die out immediately after they were used. They are single-use words, or if people like them, they can go on and live on like new neologisms and then enter the general vocabulary. On the special colloquial vocabulary side, we see professionalisms, and professionalisms are the mirror of terms. In what way? It is professional jargon, right? We'll look at it as well. Then jargon of various groups, dialectal words, vulgarisms, and again, nonce words. Now let's start with formal, common and highly literary words. Common and highly literary words. The easiest way to recognize highly literary words is when we learn the language and we don't understand them, when we don't know these words. So most words that you don't know after school are common or highly literary words after B1, right? Common literary words can also be used for stylistic purposes. They can be used for to show, for example, the perception of a child. This is an extract from a book called Super Fudge about a small boy, a small kid of 3 or 5, I forget, and the way just about his life. And there are several conversations where he doesn't understand the words. And this is easy to see how these literary words come into practice. You lie when you make up commercials. Ты лжешь, когда составляешь рекламы. His father is a copywriter, Fudge asked. No, but we sometimes exaggerate, Dad said. What exaggerate? Fudge asked. We embellish to make our point, Dad said. What's embellish? Sometimes Dad has to stretch the truth, I explained, and the narrator is his 10-year-old brother or 14-year-old brother. Thank you, Peter, Dad said. That's a very good way of putting it. So exaggerate, преувеличивать. Embellish means приукрашать, приукрашивать, right? So these are very good examples of common literary words, which grown-up people in England know, all of them. It depends on whether they use them or not, but then anyone else for cocoa and animal crackers? Do you know what animal crackers are? Biscuits crackers in the shape of animals. Mum asked, getting out her favorite chair and yawning. Me, I called. Make it unanimous, Dad said. What's unanimous? Fudge asked. It's when everyone agrees, I explained. Everyone agrees, Fudge repeated. That's nice. I like it when everyone agrees. Right? The unanimous, well, unanimous may be considered a common literary word. It can be considered an officialese word. But still, the mechanism here is the same, right? And it's mostly associated with literature of various sorts. Now, at this place, I wanted to show you one more episode. Дмитрий, а можно приготовить, пожалуйста, тот же фрагмент с того же места, начинающийся? Спасибо. And this is the next scene is when Rita comes to her husband Danny, and he's also working. He's a worker, common worker, and since she had already started her education. She had acquired some words which are typical of educated people. And look at his reaction to this, and you will see how much depends on the style. Можно включить, пожалуйста?
Aldershot, 3, Southend, 2, Cardiff, 1, Wrexham, 1.
Are you going to change your mind?
No.
2.
What would you do?
1, Preston,
I'm going to the pub with your mum and dad.
2,
That's where you should be going. Oh, well, we're not good enough for you now, are we?
Millwall, 2, Mansfield, 2, Port Vale, 1,
Benny,
Bristol,
he invited us both. Come on, change your mind. Come with me. You might actually like him.
1,
Oh, might I actually, Susan? Well, isn't that actually nice?
Well, sod you.
So you see, even the word actually, which I think you are most used to, sounds like, or looks like, in this case, function like this red rag for a bull, right? He feels that this is a marker of another style, you see, not the one he's used to. And this is a common literary word, actually, right? Now, let's look at some highly literary words. These words are already known to people who read literature. Very often, educated people understand these words. It doesn't necessarily mean that they use them, although sometimes they do. Well, let's first look at, of course, they use them in writing. Sometimes in conversation, but more rarely so. So let's look at the words that you, whether you recognize them or not. Solitude, solitude, одиночество, приятное одиночество. Sentiment, чувство, сентимент. Serendipity, no, serenity is tranquility. Sincerity, serendipity, I think serendipity, no, it's the ability to understand something very clearly. Проницательность, felicity, happiness. And tranquility, you all know this word? Тишина, спокойствие. Serenity, безмятежность. Right, fascination, очарование, fastidiousness, привередливость, facetiousness, шутливость, delusion. You know this. Elusive, ускользающий. Right, so do you recognize the value of these words, right? They denote complicated concepts usually, and that's their value. They give us an opportunity to speak not only about basic things, but about abstract things, about philosophy, about, I don't know, relationships and many other things. And actually, I remember, I have a very good example to give you of how these words work, even that people, educated people, do use them in their conversations orally. It was in Nottingham. A friend of mine who's a teacher at university was speaking to his graduate student in my presence. I was just doing something, reading, and he was speaking to his graduate student, and he said, you should make it more succinct. Speaking about her work, what is succinct? Concise, short, lapidary, right, yeah? Dry, succinct. So he used it. He used it in his everyday conversation, because speaking to students is an everyday conversation. But he used it orally, so that shows you that highly literary words can also be used orally, not only in on printed page. In which? In common conversation. Oh, of course, but it all depends on the level of your conversation. What you're talking. Also, don't forget, it depends on the domain. What you are talking about. If you are speaking about, I don't know, shopping at Pitorichka, and then you use the word succinct, I don't know in which context you would use that, but that would sound out of place. You see? But if you are speaking about, I don't know, your diploma, your final project, of course. And this is just an extract from Oscar Wilde, the Rose and the Nightingale. And the marvelous rose became crimson, like the rose of the eastern sky. Crimson was the girdle of petals, girdle опоясание из лепестков. Do you know the word petal? Right? And crimson as a ruby was the heart. Right? So mostly highly literary words are used in literature, in fiction. You'll find lots of them there. And in order to understand fiction, in order to read the literature in the original, we need to learn more and more of these words. But it's not only literature. It's also used in highbrow newspapers like The Guardian and The Telegraph. If you want to read English press with, I don't know, well, regularly, if you want to get news from there, you have to pick up these words as well. For example, the impetus for ESA to urgently chart it, blah, blah, blah. What is impetus? Impulse, very well. And chart? Начертать, начертить, обозначить, right? We offer not a pledge, but a request. What is pledge? Promise, обещание, right? So these are words which could be considered really, really literary and bookish words. Well, if we go deeper and deeper into the formal vocabulary, we'll come to poetic words, which are just one step away from highly literary words. The more literary, the more archaic, so to speak. And if we go very back in time, we'll see words which really, in essence, are Middle English words, which come to us back from Middle English, but which are even still retained by poets if they want to write especially about sublime things, elevated things, high things. For example, alas means увы, right? Thou and thee mean, remember your history of English, ты, тебя, you and you. Thine, thine, your, right? I and nay, yes and no. Well, I, apart from being poetic, it's also an archaism, it's also a dialectism, and it's, in a way, it's also a jargonism, because, for example, in the army, how would you say, есть, sir? I, sir, right? Doth is the equivalent of does. Then they like also different abbreviations like never, ne'er, over, right? Never over, things like that. Then some special words like hearken, прислушаться, woe, grief, steed, a horse, жеребец, and some others. Well, here I've marked the poetic words. A beautiful, awful summer day. What hast thou given? What taken away? What hast thou given? Have you given? On the road of life, one milestone more. In the book of life, one leaf turned, or we have to pronounce it as or in order to make it rhyme. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? This is from Tiger by William Blake. So, and still, poets use that if they want to make their poetry sublime. Now, archaisms. Most poetisms are archaic, but not all archaic words are poetisms. So basically, poetisms are part of archaic words which are retained, сохраняются, which are retained in poetry. Same as much of the dialectal material is also archaic. but it is still used in dialects by people who use them sometimes in everyday conversation. But in standard English, that may also be considered as archaism. Well, the words which you remember, the words which are no longer used, and some of them are no longer recognized by speakers, native speakers. But nevertheless, many of them are retained in classical literature, such as Shakespeare, for example. So in his day, they were not so far from him, right? Not as archaic as they are for us, but still. Betwixt swain as a peasant, habit as a dress. This is a very good example. You are used to the word habit as привычка, but if you read, well, Shakespeare, if you read even other authors, you will see that habit is sometimes used in the meaning of clothes. I pray thee, I ask you, methinks, I think, forsooth, really, brethren, brothers. Archaisms are still in living use in church, in prayers. So, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So we have archaic vocabulary and archaic grammar. And the same actually is true for Russian. If we read the prayer Otche Nash, we still have this Otche fossilized, right? Do you address your dads, papas as Otche? Well, you can if you want to do that ironically, right? If you or jokingly, but in everyday speech we don't use it. However, when it comes to religion, we read it fully seriously, right? Otche Nash, who art in heaven, thy kingdom come. So it is still they still live in some restricted areas of the language. Sometimes this religious use can be spilled over in everyday usage. For example, there's love thy neighbor, Sarah Moss, on the darker side of community in a crisis. Love thy neighbor means возлюби ближнего своего, right? So you can see that in newspapers. In order to understand this, you need to know some of archaisms too. Then archaisms are widely used in historical novels, of course. And when generally you read novels about the past, you cannot do without archaisms and historisms. I didn't single out historisms here as a special feature, but you remember historisms are things which denote objects which are no longer in use, not the word, right? Like меч, меч, боярин, крестьянин, things like that. Well, this is from Black Arrow by Stevenson. Nay, Master Shelton, said Hatch at last. Nay, but what said I? We shall all go. And there lieth poor John Carter, crying, poor sinner, for the priest. Dick gave ear. Lieth he there? He asked. Aye, in the second porter's chamber. Let's translate it. Nay, Master Shelton. Нет, Master Shelton. Nay, but what said I? Ну о чем я говорю? Ну что я сказал? We shall all go. Мы все там будем, right? And there lieth poor John Carter, crying poor sinner for the priest. Вот там лежит, да, lieth с окончанием с. Там лежит бедный Джон Картер и кричит, плачет, бедный, зовет священника, бедный грешник. Dick gave ear. Прислушался, да, прислушался. Lieth he there? Он там лежит, он спросил. Ай, in the second porter's chamber. Да, в камере, в помещении второго привратника. Then, but look, archaisms are also making a comeback to everyday speech. First, ironically. And secondly, also to show your education, but also ironically. Look at this. My parents' generation, methinks, largely failed to see the value in life without money, right? Methinks can be either ironic or just a sign or trying to show off, I think. It's kind of a wine bar for royals, forsooth. Do you remember what forsooth means? Really, really, right? And this is ironic here. A parallel would be in Russian. Ибо, засим, касаемо. These are words which are beloved by students nowadays. But please believe that they used to be archaisms 10 years ago. People would recognize them as outdated words, wouldn't use them. Nowadays, things like "ибо нефиг", they're everywhere, right? And students do like the word "ибо", and also "касаемо" and "засим". So they're making a comeback. First ironically and then seriously. Now terms and names. Terms and names. Terms and names. Well, you remember the terms are words which are specific, which are typical of some specific area of communication, usually some professional jargon, right? This is what we call English for special purposes, right? The language of law, the language of medicine, the language of physics. So we mostly associate terms with scientific areas, and many of them are. If you look at these terms, you can easily say what the sphere of communication is. Labelization, phonetics, linguistics, sulfate, chemistry, whatever it means, right? Stegosaurus, paleontology, right? Biology, megabyte, IT. So what are the capabilities of terms in terms of, I'm sorry for the pun, unintended pun, in terms of their stylistic value? Terms are bright because they bring into your narration or into your communication, again, very specific things and broaden your mind. And they are an opportunity for you to show off, right? To show how much you know. And at the same time, they serve the brevity, the exactness of communication, and of course, in literature, they can be used to create the atmosphere of a certain sphere of a certain. Again, I'm punning all the time today. To create the atmosphere of a certain sphere, right? And not necessarily science. You know that there are lots of different occupations. Some of them as low, I would say. I'm saying this in quotes, as low as some hobbies, but they have their own terminology. Actually, many hobbies being ancient pursuits like sewing and knitting. Look at this. Do you know all of these words? Probably not. Well, I don't know some of them myself. Well, do you know the word bobbin? Katushka. Katushka, bobbin, right? Stitch, стежок, cross stitch, крестик, right? Вышивать крестиком. Patchwork, patchwork, так у нас и называется, right? Лоскутное шитье. Thank you for providing the proper Russian equivalent. I don't know what tatting is. Maybe you know. Unpick, right? When you unpick something with a needle. The eye, ушко, right? So these can be considered terms as well, right? Even though they're related to a specific area. Well, many other spheres like stamp collecting, I don't know, coin collecting, beekeeping, all of these pursuits have their own terminology. And these can be used, of course, by the authors to create vivid pictures. Oops. My animation went wrong, I think. Come on. Okay, never mind. Behind this picture, you see the picture of rhododendron. I just wanted to ask you what these things are. Because, among terms, we often classify names as well, but they're not terms. There is such a thing as nomenclature. You haven't studied that in your lexicology, but this is one more field of language. These are different, all sorts of names, right? Onomastics, but nomenclature is different. That's about the types of and specific names of individual kinds of things, species and things like that. And they can also be quite picturesque because they bring specificity into your some specific colors into your speech, like rhododendron. You see you don't see the picture of it behind this main picture. In this bright green picture, you see Erythroxylum cocci. What do you think it is? Yeah, well, you can say it's yes. That's the plant which produces cocaine and coca, right? Cocaine, and I think Coca-Cola as well, if I'm not mistaken. I may be mistaken. You should double check me. Magnolia campbelli, I didn't put the picture onto the slide, but you can find it yourself. It's a type of flower, or rhinoceros beetle. Yeah, don't you think he's a cutie, right? And yeah, it's a very interesting one. And this is the stylistic potential of terms and names. They can create vivid images. They can serve to create beautiful metaphors. For example, this is this is my third pun for today, for a bad one. For example, this is an example from The Guardian or from the Telegraph newspaper, which is about problems in the NHS, National Health Service in the UK. The president of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has called hospitals lobster traps, easy for the frail to get into, hard to get out of. Frail, yeah, weak and ill and fragile. So the hospitals, it's easy for them to get into, but very, very hard to get out of. He called it a lobster trap. You see a picture of a lobster trap here with a narrow entrance, and well, with a wide entrance and narrowing down inside, and then you cannot get out, right? Because it is difficult for the lobster to find the way out this small, narrow exit, right? And this term of lobster fishing provided this interesting metaphor, a very it's very spot on, very exact, right? It creates this metaphor, but it's a term. Never trust labor. Raising taxes isn't their DNA, right? This DNA is a term which is already in common usage, but this creates a beautiful metaphor, right? And a hyperbole of labor, of the Labour Party adapt at and in favor of raising taxes. Actually, this example is from the Telegraph, and the Telegraph is a conservative newspaper, so it criticizes Labour. Terms can also be used in various jokes, and you know about this. Like a scientist asks his wife at dinner to pass the, I forget the English, sodium chloride, something like this, natri chlor. And what is this? Salt, right? This is a cartoon, again from the Telegraph, which describes the state of, tell me what. Look at the note. Western economy. But here it is styled as the name of a plant, right? Like this one, something like Magnolia campbelli. And here it is, economy westernia, right? And the tree is losing its last leaves. And this cartoon was published in autumn, so it makes it even more interesting. Now, from terms, it is a short step to officialese. You remember officialese, the language of official documents. It is not a pure stylistic marker because it comes from two sources: literary words, and sometimes highly literary words, and from terms. That's why I placed it not after literary words, but after terms. And this is what is used by official documents in order to make the text formal, right? In order to make it sometimes in order to make it what's the word? Have the word policy? No. Monosemantic, right? If you want it to be understood in only one way, that's why they use all these cumbersome structures, constructions, but they also use these words, cliches, formulae of politeness, and finally legal terminology. And of course, very often and most times they overdo it. So small print is notorious for its lack of transparency and clarity. It's very difficult for ordinary people to use this, to read this officially, let alone speak it. And as your textbook in lexicology says, officially is better avoided in everyday conversation because it makes it sound formal. Although, of course, you cannot do without officiallys. That's what we need if you want to fill in the visa form, if we want to, well, to fill in any form really, and to read any official document. If you want to function in our society, we need this. Are there any words here which are not familiar to you? Plenipotentiary representative. Полномочный представитель. I second the motion. I support the suggestion very well. I support the suggestion. I second the motion very well. The resulting text would look like this. In witness whereof we have caused this diploma to be signed and our corporate seal to be hereto affixed. So all sorts of wills and things like that are written with officialese, legal terminology. It can also be used in fiction to create this smell of officialese. This is translated as в свидетельство чего или там в свидетельство коего мы подписали этот диплом и приложили к нему нашу корпоративную печать. Well, still in passive. Bigger texts look like this. This is taken from the website of the World Medical Association. And this is the WMA resolution on academic sanctions or boycotts. So just look at this example, real example of a document and see whether you can read it. It is a difficult one, but it is, as I said, monosemantic, and not monosemantic, that's the wrong word, but it tries to be exact and clear. Therefore, be it resolved that the WMA regards the application of such restrictions as arbitrary political decision designed to deny international scholarly exchange and to blacklist particular physicians or bodies of physicians because of their nationality or because of the political policies of their governments. And this is all preceded by 5 clauses, right? Whereas, blah, 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 whereas, blah, 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 and so on. So this is officialese. Sometimes such a style is mocked in fiction. This is an example from Terry Pratchett, a humorous story. Dorcas leads a tribe of gnomes, gnome. So they are small people who live in the basement of a huge mall, shopping mall. And they have a thing which is always silent. They were told by their forefathers to always carry it with them. And one day it starts speaking. And it speaks clearly in officialese. It wants to warn them that the supermarket is going to be demolished soon. But it does so in such words that they cannot understand it at first. I have urgent information to impart to the leaders of this community. Are you aware that you're living in a constructed entity with a limited life? Fascinating, said Dorcas. All those words. You could imagine, you could almost understand what's it saying, right? I think it describes our emotions when we read some officialese. I remember it when I read some official papers. All those words, Vsechislava, you could almost imagine that you can understand them. Now, barbarisms. Barbarisms are foreign words which are recognizably foreign, but they're used in literature, they're used in everyday speech by educated people, of course, or they're used by foreigners, right? They're used by foreigners. Do you remember this famous video with a Russian speaker in the United States who, yeah, зависит от того, какой fabric и какой shape и size, right? So this is how foreignisms and barbarisms begin. Right? If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's worth seeing. So these words are also borrowed into the language. Well, English, for understandable reasons, has a lot of words from French, and people use them to show off, of course, to show that they're educated. Such words as en route, on the way, по пути, bon mot, a good phrase, a witty saying, an aphorism, en passant, in passing. He mentioned en passant. Au fait, well, to know something well, to be knowledgeable in something. He's au fait with computers. Au fait. Actually, if you want to get more of those, I advise you to find innovations, the advanced level. You know, this series of student books, innovations. Well, if you don't know, we have them in our library here. So it is innovations, the red one, advanced. This is unit 16, I think. They have quite a lot of them there, very useful ones. So if you want, you can enlarge your vocabulary with that one. So noted in an earlier biography is another bon mot, which Voltaire probably did say, right? That's how it is used in writing. But also, foreignisms and barbarisms are used to create local color. If you write about foreign lands, the little boy, too, we observed, had a famous appetite and consumed schinken and braten and kartoffeln and cranberry jam, right? We immediately know that they are in Germany, right? So these are the unassimilated foreign words taken into the text to create some color. Sometimes they're used jokingly as well, especially the understandable words. This is user's commentary under an article on the Guardian about Aldi and Lidl. These are two low-budget supermarket chains in the UK, and originally coming from Germany. It's something like Pitorechka and Magnit, and about the different things associated with them. But this is one of the readers who writes, Danke, Aldi and Lidl, for being the much-needed disruption, blah, 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 right? Sometimes they write spasibo, things like that, if they are speaking about Russia. Now, informal vocabulary. Well, you remember about common colloquial words, right? Colloquialisms. These are the words which are used in colloquial conversation. Below them, substandard, are vulgarisms. So these are the words which are used by uneducated people, and especially rude words, pejorative words. And we also have slang. Slang is a very broad term. It is understood differently by different scholars. But we have, like, if we summarize much of that, we can come to the conclusion that there is general slang, which is connected with specialist slang, teen slang, professional slang, and social groups slang, which are not professional. So by age, by profession, and by other roles in society. What is the relationship between common colloquial words and general slang? Very often, it is difficult to tell them apart, especially familiar colloquial and slang words. They must be familiarnymi. That means that they imply good, very close relationships. However, if you use these words with unknown people or with people who you don't know well, that sounds familiar. right? It often shows lack of respect, lack of education, and general slang is close to familiar colloquial, but it also has a huge potential for expression, because it is slang is expressive. It must create a picture, right? It must create a picture. Uh, yeah, we'll speak about that when we come to that. Common and special colloquial. Well, here I'm giving you here more like familiar colloquial words. He's some doctor. He's an awesome doctor, very good doctor, right? Don't be all day about it. Don't take too much time. To tuck in, уплетать, уминать, right? He was surprised to see her tuck in hardly. Where did she put all that, right? Oi. Oi. Okay, we will skip it. Vulgarisms and pejoratives. Well, I'm not going to devote too much time to that for understandable reasons, but the word vulgarism encompasses not only rude words, it encompasses also the intentional or unawares use of grammatically wrong words, right, or wrong grammar. You're the best, seriously, instead of you are the best. Do you remember Mother to Son, where she used I's been climbing, right? So grammar mistakes which native speakers make, they're vulgarisms, right? And they're used in songs, for example. Well, you've probably heard a lot of that in songs, right? But usually in those songs which aim to create the atmosphere of trash, the atmosphere of lack of education, the atmosphere of macho guys who are not educated but who are tough, something like that. Me no money, me no come. Savvy, how do you translate this? Не будет денег, я не приду. Смекаешь? Усек, right? Or in Russian, тебя хотят за генерала отдавать, а ты что придумываешь? Right? So this is vulgarism. Actually, ain't is a good word to remember because, well, it's associated with various uneducated groups of people, but sometimes they have it is part of catchphrases, really useful catchphrases. Look at this. You ain't seen nothing yet. What does it mean? Это еще пока ничего. You ain't seen nothing yet. So more is coming, is to come. And my favorite, I use it in Russian too. That's, common sense, very wise, a very wise phrase. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Если это не сломано, не надо это чинить. There is only two gentlemen in this room, right? But if you ever fix anything, remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Gotcha. Got you. Попался. This is from the Sun newspaper back in the years when there was the Falklands War. Gotcha. Попался. Our lads sink gunboat and whole cruiser. Наши парни потопили канонерку и продырявили крейсер. Right? So if you want to get more of informal vulgarisms, common colloquial vocabulary, you can read lowbrow newspapers like The Sun, the Daily Mail, the Mirror. Right? They are fond of this. Sometimes these colloquialisms and vulgarisms are used again to create, well, they're used for humor, like this one, the caricature of the economy of the United Kingdom, under which there is a huge hole. And there is a worker who is invited to fill in the hole, and he says, oh, you're looking at 50 billion plus to fill that, governor. How do you translate that? Вольно? Начальник. Начальник. That's right. Вам придется тратить больше 50 миллиардов, чтобы это засыпать, да, чтобы это починить. Начальник. Right, so this form of address, also sort of a vulgarism, right, a familiar colloquial, is used here for this beautiful metaphor. Well, and of course, low colloquial are the words which you should avoid. That's why we have very few examples here. But they're sort of markers of this, like hell. If you use hell, this is low colloquial. This is something you don't use with if you're educated. I mean, of course, it's the same as with Russian swear words, you know? Even academicians sometimes use swear words, but that is sort of anomalous, or it is done very, very rarely, right? Same with this. Avoid words with hell, with these words like bloody, lousy. And I deleted one, I had one more phrase from fiction with the word nigger, which nowadays is a no-no too. Although, well, yeah, because Negro, I think Negro is fine in Russian, although not any longer in the United States or England or the UK. But nigger is definitely a no-no, yes. Uh-huh. Oh, if it has a strong I, it is forbidden. Uh-huh. It may be ironic, right? And self-deprecating, right? Well, thank you. So lots of nuances. I agree. Lots of nuances. Now, slang. You remember the slang comes from various sources, and this flower is not complete. You can add more and more petals. Army, underworld, navy and merchant marine, immigrants, hobos and tramps, railroad workers, baseball players, show business workers, high school students, college students, financial district employees, jazz musicians and fans, narcotic addicts, and more of them, right? This from these special groups come various words which fill this slang niche. An example, well, since we're in stylistics, I wanted to show that slang indeed is a very picturesque layer of vocabulary. So it provides expressive means to the utterance by itself, like synonyms and antonyms. For example, this is truckers slang or CB slang from the United States. Now, tell me, guess who is Miss Piggy? And she is also Mama Bear. Miss Piggy is ruder. Mama Bear is less rude. Who are truckers? Дальнобойщики, right? So who do you think is Miss Piggy and Mama Bear? A female police officer. And this is Miss Piggy from the Muppets show, a popular show. A bulldog. A bulldog is a truck which is made by Mack, and its brand features a bulldog. Yeah. Oh, well, Miss Piggy for the female ones. I'm not sure what is there for the male. Yeah, do you know? Oh, wait.
It's incredibly ironic for me to just explain this kind of offensive terms, but still, mostly in British football fans culture, they call most of the policemen, most of the people in the police departments just pigs. So Miss Piggy is just, yeah, the type of female police officers. So yeah, all the policemen are called pigs in just their language.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I think that maybe answers your question, because although this is truckers slang, but it might be connected with that general football fan slang as well. So going on with bulldog. Bulldog is a type of truck, which is of Mack make, and it features a bulldog. And moreover, it looks like a bulldog a bit, don't you think? With the jaws, protruding jaws. And tell me, what is grandma lane? Not the left, the right lane, right, the right lane, the slowest lane on the road, right? Your grandma lane. So you see, they're all either metaphoric or metonymic or otherwise picturesque words. Well, we'll skip this one, and well, just adding slang words to your utterance makes it picturesque, but we must remember the warning from Olga Vasilievna's textbook. Avoid using slang unless you're writing a piece of fiction, because you are highly unlikely to find yourself in a situation where you can organically use slang. You must be within these groups to be able to pass as cool people who use slang words, because you know, if you use slang words in an uncool way, this is uncool, right? Well, cartoons also feature slang. Pub grub served daily. Chuck was nervous about trying the grub. What does grub mean? What does this pub grub served daily? What does it mean? Grub is хавчик, еда, жратва, right? So pub grub and grub, but on the other hand, grub means личинка. So Chuck didn't know the word grub in the slang meaning. He only knew the neutral meaning of the word slang, of the word grub, which is личинка, and he was uneasy about trying the grub. Dialectisms. Well, dialectisms can be used in writing and they usually use with graphon to show how the dialect features work. They're used usually for local color, to reflect local color, местный колорит, and also to characterize the characters. This is my fourth pun today. There is something going on. To characterize the characters. And now, Dmitry, можно вас попросить включить тот, который пирамидку? Well, look at this. This is the same film. Rita first arrives at university. This is what she says. А можно развернуть тоже ее на весь? Спасибо. Одну секунду. So she uses, well, she speaks with a dialect accent and also with this working class accent. And look at the effect. Можно включать.
Come in. For God's sake, come in.
I'm coming in, aren't I? It's that stupid bleeding handle on the door. You want to get it fixed?
Yes, I meant to.
Well, that's no good, is it? Always meaning to. You want to get on with it, because one of these days you'll be shouting, come in, and it'll go on forever, because the poor sod on the other side won't be able to get in, and you won't be able to get out.
And you are?
Можно выключать.
I'm a
Right. So, the stream of dialect, right, and working class English is very well, sort of characterizes her as a personality as well. Very impulsive, but pure-hearted on the other hand. Nonce words. Nonce words, both in the literary layer and in the informal layer, are the words which are created for the nonce. Occasionalisms, occasionalismi. They're often created by writers in order to strike the reader. This is a famous nonsense poem by Lewis Carroll called Jabberwocky, and from Alice in Wonderland. It is all made up of nonsense words, right? But not only nonsense words, but also nonce words created for the nonce. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogroves, and the mome raths outgrabe. The Russian translation did a brilliant job as well. Воркались хливки и шорьки, пырялись по нове, и хрюкотались люки, как мюмзики в мове. None of these words exist, right? And this is just for the nonsense style of literature. However, nonsense words can be purely very well understandable, and they are spot on, but they are rarely, well, sometimes then they don't find a way outside this particular text. She objected to George because he was George. It was, as it were, his essential Georgeness that offended her. I didn't buy the piano to be sonatoed out of my house. There was a balcony full of gentlemen. So he's not just talented, he's genius. We must reform Europe. We must rethink Europe. I love you matcha, plenty matcha. Me too. After all, they are our honorable representatives from the halls of Congress. Don't you think this is brilliant? Representatives. And next sentence is before Joe Biden became president. It was from a newspaper. Joe Biden, the Democrat Party vice presidential candidate, thinks patriotism should be spelled patriotism. I find this brilliant too. Now, if we go on and we think about a total mixture of styles, of restyling things, we can see that, for example, lots of different spoofs and parodies. Well, this is an example of parody, a parody song to the vacuum cleaner. There was this genre of odes in the Middle Ages to sing something, some virtue, something, or some object. And here, modern content is described in Middle English terms. Havacum clenere, singeth i songe, a lufsum laehit is iwene, with breathinges amorous and stronge, thu makes mone a morninge longe, till all mi hus is klene, a serpente is the luvile necke, the body is a little bulle. Can you translate it? Havacum clenere, singeth i songe. Hi, vacuum cleaner, sing your song. I will not translate the second line, I forget it. With breathings amorous and strong, дыханиями любовными и сильными, you make many mornings long. Ты делаешь многие мои утра длинными, till all my house is clean. A serpent is thy lovely neck. Твоя прекрасная шея – это змей. The body is a little bull. Твое тело – это маленький бычок. Right? Now, it can be vice versa. This is a rap rewriting, I think it is rap, rewriting of Romeo and Juliet in rappers' slang. Are you one of Romeo's boys? Yeah, that my peeps. Do you have a problem with that? Romeo, don't sweat him, man. I got your back. Romeo, you little punk, I'm gonna kill you. Chill, Tybalt. You don't even know me. I've got better things to do than fight. Right? Okay. Well, it can also be used even more intricately. For example, it was a long time ago. There was some comment. It was an article about Russia, about Russian politics. And there was some comment which favored Russians. And then comes one commenter who below the newspaper article. And he tries to mock this person, to say that he is a troll, that he's not English, that he's not American, that he's actually Russian. Hello, I'm average of American citizen and definitely not Russian. I have never heard glorious President Putin, but he is sounding like strong leader, like bear. Donald Trump, J. President-elect, will also be strong leader. Obama is make excuse for Hillary of Clinton, who is weak like watery borscht, which I do not eat because I'm definitely not Russian. Right? This is trolling, of course, right? I will say it in the microphone.
Как второй лектор. Несколько лет назад была просто очень схожая тенденция, когда очень много таких вот уже согнанных троллей со стороны Китая было отправлено в русский интернет, и очень много было сообщений, каких-то сайтов и комментариев, которые начали высмеивать по типу «Я обычный рабочий Иван, город Тверь. Моя уважать великий коммунистический партия Китай и союзный ПУ». Как-то так.
Yeah. Well, yeah, such things exist, but in this case, it is an American who is trying to troll Russians as if they are American and express their views. Well, basis is the last thing that I'm going to speak about. I have just 1 minute. I have enough. That's enough for what I have. Basis is a stylistic device of combining elevated and low styles, high and low notions with resulting incongruity, несоответствие, often causing laughter. Do you remember from that extract from theater? I love him. Presently he blew his nose, right? Я его так люблю. Он высморкался, right? This is basis. Let's read the last one. The ballerina rose gracefully en pointe and extended one slender leg behind her like a dog at a fire hydrant. Балерина поднялась на пуантах и грациозно подняла ногу, как собака возле водоколонки. Right? This is this basis. Он был в Лондоне, в Константинополе, в Тетюшах, в Казани. I visited Тетюши. That's a nice place. But of course, that's not Constantinople or London. Каким восторгом светятся их глаза, какое неподдельное счастье выражает их лица, когда на столе появляется бутылочка. Это была без преувеличения тяжелая трагедия, сравнимая с трагедией Гамлета или Короля Лира. Неожиданно проиграла ответственный матч их любимая команда. Right, so this is basis. It's similar to anticlimax. Remember we discussed such things. Well, and that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. Можно выключить.